Hey y'all, this is episode number 39. Going to be talking about decriminalizing drugs today, why we should do it, arguments in favor of doing that, what benefits we might see, and kind of the inspiration for why I'm talking about this today. So, hope you enjoy this episode. If you're in the Austin area and you're looking to have your TV mounted on the wall, your entertainment system upgraded, anything like that to do with watching TV, go to Bat City TV. Let them know the Sovereign Individual podcast sent you, and they'll hook it up with a discount. Thank you once again to Flavor Aid for creating the intro music you're about to hear. Their EP, All My Life, is available on Spotify and wherever you listen to music, so make sure to check them out. I'm sure you'll enjoy that. There is a slightly new intro music, a little bit longer version, so I hope you all enjoy that, and I hope you enjoy this episode. See, the enemy of the state is the individual. It all comes down to who you trust. And for me, that answer is never going to be the government. You can look at all the violence and corruption and hypocrisy of the state, yet I'm the crazy one for thinking that it shouldn't exist. What's up, y'all? This is the Sovereign Individual podcast. I'm your host, Eric Guerra. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a little while. I think the last episode I recorded was on Thanksgiving, so obviously the holidays can get a little hectic and busy, and just had stuff going on. Went to San Antonio for the Alamo Bowl. Saw my Longhorns dominate Utah, so that's been good. The Chiefs have been killing it in the playoffs so far and are one win away from getting to the Super Bowl, so been distracted by a lot of stuff. And just been busy. Work gets crazy, at that time of year, from October to December. But now things will calm down a little bit. So hopefully I can get back in a rhythm and get this to be a little bit more regular output, and find ways to do that. I do have some conversations with interesting people on the horizon as well. Got a couple of folks that I think are going to be real fun conversations, real cool stuff that they do. So we'll get those out here soon as well. So I appreciate your patience, sticking with me. This show ain't going anywhere. Again, it's a huge outlet and catharsis for me to be able to just get my views out in this kind of form. So not going anywhere. Hoping to build upon 2019, have some decent listenership, hoping to grow it in 2020 and see where this might go. So thank you once again for sticking with me. If you're liking what you're hearing so far, please subscribe, rate, and review the show, and share it with anybody you think might be interested in listening to this. So today we're going to be talking about decriminalizing drugs. All the drugs. And I mean all the drugs when I say that. So we're just gonna talk about what that means, why I say that, kind of the reasoning behind it, multiple reasonings behind it, and I don't know, shouldn't be too long of an episode, but just kind of give the libertarian perspective on this kind of stuff. So I guess we'll start with kind of what has inspired this particular episode. I wanted to do it earlier on back in December, but things just happened. So there was a death in December that kind of inspired me to do this episode of a rapper. And then so today basically two things happened. Mac Miller's estate released his final album that he was working on before he died. Mac Miller is one of my favorite rappers of all time. I loved his music, kind of grew up with him in a way. He started to become popular as a young teenage rapper, and I was close to the same age when that was happening. So a lot of the themes of his songs, like partying and drinking up all night, that kind of stuff, really resonated with where I was at in my life. And so it was kind of interesting as I got older and matured. So did him, and his music especially, and the themes that he was talking about, and the different styles that he experimented with, and the different ways in which putting songs together. So it was really kind of a cool thing to just feel this kind of connection to him in a way that I didn't necessarily feel with a whole lot of artists, because I've kind of felt that bond in that sort of way, just with the connection of his music and how it kind of mirrored my own growth and maturity in my life. So that album was released today. Eminem also released a surprise album, which is awesome. He's my favorite rapper of all time. And he had a song on that album that features Juice WRLD. And Juice WRLD is the rapper that died, that was going to inspire the first episode, died back in December. So this is kind of what inspired me to do the episode now. Just kind of seemed fitting, I this particular day, an album, and then a song with both of these guys on it came out, so just it seemed fitting to do it. So unfortunately, Mac Miller died of an overdose of drugs. Fentanyl was found to be in them, so that seems to be kind of the main culprit in a lot of ODs of late. Is fentanyl being cut into the drugs that the person was taking. Juice WRLD died back in December. I don't remember the exact date. His stemmed from he swallowed a bunch of Percocets. He had taken a private jet or private plane to Chicago, and there was law enforcement agents coming on. I believe FBI was what I heard, but I'm not sure exactly if it was FBI or DEA or who it might have been. But they were going to be coming on board the plane, so he swallowed a bunch of Percocets in order to not be caught with them, because it's illegal, quote unquote, for him to have those in his possession. So he swallowed a bunch, which resulted in him having a seizure and dying before he got to the hospital. He had a seizure as he was walking through the airport. So, very unfortunate. These guys were both awesome artists, awesome rappers that I thoroughly enjoyed listening to and was looking forward to listening to their music throughout the years, seeing them live in concert throughout the years. I got to see Mac quite a few times. I hadn't seen him in a few years and was kind of in my mind that, oh yeah, I want to catch him next time he's in Austin. And then Juice WRLD, he was a young up and comer. I'd never gotten a chance to see him live, but I wanted to and intended to, if and when he came to Austin. So obviously that really sucks selfishly for me, and part of the reason why I want to end this idiotic war on drugs is to not see talented people like that taken from us far too early, because I feel cheated out of enjoyment of music that they would have gone on to make. And then obviously their families. I mean, that's devastating to lose somebody. Juice WRLD had just turned 21. Mac was 26 or 27, I believe, 27. I think he was part of the Forever 27 Club. So just devastating for someone that young to leave this world in that sort of manner. And so I can only imagine the pain that their families are going through. And then with Juice WRLD especially, I mean, that's a direct result of the war on drugs, that fear in him of being caught with those Percocets and what that might lead to. It wasn't a smart decision. I'm not arguing that, and it wasn't a good idea, and it's very dangerous to do that. But that fear exists because of the war on drugs, and because it's illegal for him to be in possession of those, and he was scared for what the consequences would be if he was found to be in possession of those, and that's awful. So let's just get into the arguments a little bit. Why I feel the way that I do, why most libertarians are in this camp. Every libertarian is going to be in favor of decriminalization of marijuana. That's, if you don't support that, you're not a libertarian, which is the most libertarian thing you can say, accusing someone of not being a real libertarian. Not necessarily every libertarian is on board with all the drugs. It kind of depends. Most are on board with, psilocybin, mushrooms, hallucinogenics, stuff like that. They're okay with. But, it kind of varies per person. But a good majority are in favor of decriminalizing all drugs. So one of the main reasons is banning something does not work to curtail the use or the sale or the market for said thing. I'm going to use examples from both sides of the spectrum here. So I will hear from the left that banning abortions doesn't work. And if you limit access and restrict access to safe abortions, they will occur in back alleys with, the coat hanger whole type argument, which is true. And it's fair. And then I get told by folks on the right, and also believe myself, gun regulations don't work. They only harm lawful gun owners, and that people with ill intentions are going to get the guns no matter what, no matter how many restrictions you put on it. That is also true. And I think, I believe in almost every conversation I have and what I can gather on social media, I don't know that there's anybody out there in modern society that believes that the Prohibition era was a good idea or a good government policy or a good decision by the government. So you kind of see where I'm going here. Prohibition doesn't work. It's never worked. Because as long as there is a demand, again, this is basic economics. As long as there's a demand for something, a market will provide it. Whether that be a free and open, market, or a black market, an underground market, forced to do so because of government regulation, government intervention, laws that are written to make whatever that product or service is illegal to sell openly. So that's what we're looking at there. Again, just kind of a basic economic argument as far as why prohibition doesn't work. It's really not hard to see once you kind of understand just basic economics behind something. There's the demand. The demand is going to be met because there's money to be made by meeting that demand. And the crazy thing about it, the FBI tweeted this thing out the other day, celebrating the 100-year anniversary of Prohibition. And then they talked about how they took down gangsters like Al Capone. And I can't remember who else they mentioned. It might have been Lucky Luciano. I don't know. And I tweeted out, but it's just I tweeted out a reply. I don't remember exactly what I said, but it's something along the lines of what I'm about to say right now. Only the state could have the audacity, the absolute audacity and disrespect for history to post something like that. That they post a policy that they instituted, which was an abject failure. Abject failure. Consumption of alcohol rose drastically during Prohibition. It led to organized crime and gangsters, like the very ones that they bragged about taking down. Like, only the government can have such an abject failure of a policy that creates organized crimes and gangs, creates this massive problem in which the government then has to use violence to solve, because it's the only way government can solve problems is with the use of violence and the fact that they monopolize the use of force. And then they celebrate that. Hey, this guy Al Capone created or exists in the capacity that we know him specifically because of the decisions we made. And then we had to use violence to fight him and his gangs and the mob because of decisions that we made. And now we're going to celebrate it because we solved the problem. Well, the problem didn't need to exist. And then you talk about other things that went on during Prohibition where the government literally poisoned alcohol. And like tens of thousands of people died directly from being poisoned by the government. Again, the government had dictated that you didn't have self-ownership of your body and self-determination to decide what you wanted to put in it. And because people were saying, well, screw you to the government, I'll drink alcohol anyway, they're like, okay, well then we'll poison you and you'll die. Like, that's insane. That's what Prohibition was. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody that thinks Prohibition was a good idea. Yet we have a lot of people that still argue for the drug war. And now we have these violent cartels that are so powerful, that have so much money because, again, basic economics. The demand exists, especially from the United States, for drug use. It hasn't gone up and it hasn't gone down in the decades-long war on drugs. It's remained constant, it's remained the same, and the cartels in Mexico have become wealthy beyond their wildest dreams by providing for that demand. Now, they've also been armed and funded by the CIA at different points in time. But that's a whole other thing that we don't necessarily need to get into. But yeah, the same government that makes it illegal throws people in cages for drug use and drug sales within the United States, funds cartels, siphons crack into the United States in order to start the crack epidemic, created LSD. You know, we went over MK Ultra. The government created LSD. And then now, you know, that we're finally starting to actually be able to do some research into drugs, we're finding that MDMA can be incredibly useful in treating PTSD. Same with psilocybin mushrooms. We have people in Silicon Valley microdosing on acid and psilocybins and coming up with crazy ideas. The double helix, the structure of DNA, we know that because of acid. The guy took acid, and that's how he came up with the structure of DNA, figured out that it must be this double helix that has now been confirmed. So we have this massive war on drugs. It's been an insane failure. We've wasted trillions of dollars, ruined lives. And the biggest argument and why I want to decriminalize drugs, and the reason I say decriminalize instead of legalize, is because I just want any reference to drugs taken out of the penal code, and then let the market dictate how things are going to move forward. But when you legalize, when the government legalizes it, it then taxes it, and that is absolute crap. It infuriates me to no end that the state of Colorado is making millions in tax money off of taxing weed, and there are people sitting in a cage for nonviolent weed charges. So I do not want to see the government be able to profit off of the drugs becoming legal, quote unquote, because that's crap. They've wasted trillions of dollars fighting it. They've ruined millions of lives. They don't then get to profit off of it. Again, they create this problem, and then they take the credit for solving it when they created it in the first place. And their solution is, okay, well, we'll let you do that, but we have to get our cut too. No. So that's why I want to just see decriminalization. The government shouldn't get a cent of any of these sales. But morally, the biggest thing is it comes down to the idea of self-ownership and self-determination. I don't have the moral right to tell you what you can and cannot put into your body. That is your choice. I may not agree with what you're doing. I may not want to put a particular kind of drug into my body, and I may want to put a different kind of drug into my body. But that is my choice to make, and that is your choice to make, and I don't have the right to use the force of government to tell you that what you choose to do with your body is wrong, and that we can throw you in a cage for that decision that you're making. Now again, this isn't like some free-for-all. You can't just do drugs and then do whatever the hell you want. You know, this still exists within the realms of don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. But a victimless crime, where you inject something into your body, or you take a pill, or you smoke something, that is your choice. It is entirely your choice, and nobody has the moral right, or has the right to tell you otherwise. So that's the moral justification for what I'm talking about here. And I really don't think it's a hard one to grasp. Like, no matter how you may feel about certain drugs like that, and the argument, well, if you decriminalize it, then people will be doing meth. People are doing meth now. So, and the reason that they do meth is most of the time is because they get hooked on something different and cleaner, and then it becomes too expensive for them, and so they go to what's cheaper and they get meth. So if we actually had an open free market where drugs were able to be sold, safe drugs were able to be sold, I really don't know that meth would exist anymore. If people could legally buy and cost effectively buy drugs, safe drugs, I really don't see meth making it out of there. But and that kind of brings us to the health thing. In an open free market, it would allow for safe drugs to be sold, because again, the demand hasn't gone anywhere. The demand is there. It's going to continue. It's not going anywhere, no matter how bad you fight it. The market will provide. So why don't we allow the free and open market to provide safe drugs, instead of having to hope that whatever drugs you're buying aren't cut with something that's going to make you OD and die? Excuse me. I mean, when I say regulations, in my mind, I mean third-party regulations that show how good this, kind of what exists right now within, like CBD stuff. There's no federal regulations over it. It's third-party tested type stuff, and that's what I'm imagining. But hell, I would even take government-regulated drugs if it guarantees that we're getting people clean drugs and safe drugs. Because the crazy thing is like there's just awful education when it comes to drugs in this country. I remember growing up and going and being in health class in school and being told, you can take ecstasy one time and it can kill you. And it's like, okay, well, yes, that's true. That's true of any type of drug. There can be adverse reactions by an individual, and it depends on them. Like, that kind of fear tactic isn't smart, because all it does is it doesn't talk about, hey, a big reason that you could die from your first time of taking a drug is mixing it with other drugs. And people don't talk about that, especially when it comes to prescription drugs. Those can be deadly combinations if you're mixing street drugs with prescription drugs. And so that's a big thing that needs to be improved too. And I have an example here. There's an organization in Norway called the Association for Safer Drug Policies in Norway. And they've been running this ad campaign, and it's really cool. And so I just wanted to read a couple of these. This one just says, Thomas did not die when he tried GHB. He avoided alcohol all night and dosed correctly. John did not die when he overdosed on heroin. He was not alone, and his friends had naloxone, something. I'm not sure. I think that's that thing that you can just inject somebody when they're ODing, and then it helps spring them back. Here's another one. Sarah did not die when she tried MDMA. She took just half a dose and waited to feel the effects. Emma did not die when she overdosed on alcohol. Her friends recognized the symptoms and called 911. So that's part of it too, is educating it properly, that like drug use can be done responsibly and in moderation, just like anything else, just like alcohol, just like sugar intake, just like all kinds of things that we don't view in the same light. And then that would help to curtail this fear. Like, there's so many overdoses and problems when it comes to drug use also stem from that fear, from the drug war. You don't want to take your friend to the hospital or call 911 because they're overdosing on drugs, and you don't want them to get in trouble. Like, there's that inherent fear. So how many people go untreated, and how many lives are lost that could have been saved if there wasn't that fear, and if there was proper education about drug use. And so, and lastly, I mean, it's just, that's a huge thing, and that's something that needs to fundamentally change. You cannot have a war on drugs for decades at a time, abjectly fail at it, waste trillions of dollars, ruin millions of lives, and then expect me to just believe that somehow it's going to turn around and that drug use is going to change, when it hasn't. And when every historical example and every data point that we can point to, vis-a-vis Prohibition, vis-a-vis Portugal, when Prohibition is lifted, usage goes down and normalizes. So and we've seen this actually in Colorado, where teen use of marijuana has dropped. Because part of the reason that you do pot as a teenager is because you're not supposed to. It's this illegal thing. That's part of the draw of it. And then there will be folks who like it and want to do it more, and then some who don't. That's their prerogative. It is kind of interesting to see how the conversation has changed now that certain places have legalized it. People now just start to see, oh, well, I guess it's not that bad. Well, it was never that bad. It's never been bad. And the same can be said about all kinds of drugs that are used. Like I said, they're finding MDMA can help treat PTSD. That's huge. Especially with what we've had a huge amount of our population go off to fight in these decades-long wars in the Middle East that we found out we were completely lied to about, completely lied into. I can only imagine the psychological effect that has coming back from a war and realizing that what you did over there was for lies, and the people you killed were for lies. So yeah, if this offers ways that we can treat them and help them reacclimate into life and deal with that psychological stress and trauma, yeah, let's do it. Let's start looking into this stuff. And then the biggest thing too, and what I always try to tell folks on the right who tend to be the strongest opponents of legalization or decriminalization or anything like that, you want to curtail immigration, you want to fix the problems at the border, you want to take out the cartel at their kneecaps, decriminalize drugs. See how fast that changes. When there's not violence, insane cartel violence that these folks are trying to escape and come to the southern border to escape, when they actually live and thrive and peacefully exist in the area in which they're born and aren't having to escape violence created and perpetuated and elevated by the United States government, and then they come to try to seek refuge in the United States, trying to escape the very problems created by the United States drug policy and the violence created by the United States drug policy, the violence created by the CIA deciding which cartel that they want to fund. You want to talk about military grade weapons? Look at what the cartel has. Tell me where they got those. I could tell you. 3 letters. CIA. But you want to take them out at the kneecaps? You want to curtail illegal immigration and stop the flooding at the border? Decriminalize drugs. Watch how quickly that happens when there's not violence that they're having to escape. Watch how quickly the cartels lose their money and power when they're not the ones providing the drugs to the market in the United States. Because again, the demand's not going anywhere. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results? What's it been, 70 years? 60? 50? I don't know. When did the drug war start? 70s? 50 years? Yeah. Time to try something new. Time to try to work towards actually solving this problem. And the thing is when you decriminalize, you can actually start treating addiction as a health problem instead of a criminal problem, which is where we need to be moving anyway. Again, drug use can be done in moderation, can be done safely, can be done in a healthy manner. Addiction is a health problem. That's going to occur. People get addicted. There's alcoholics. There's people addicted to sugar and processed food and awful things for you in that way. There's people addicted to prescription medication. That's going to occur still. But let's work towards getting those people actually help. And let's not throw people in cages for selling stuff or for having stuff on them. Because not everybody becomes an addict. Plenty of people can use drugs responsibly. So let's make sure the drugs that they're getting are clean. Let's make sure if they do get addicted, we can treat them correctly and treat it as a health issue. And let's stop allowing these Mexican violent cartels of thugs to profit off of the demand by the United States to create this violence, to create these conditions that people living down there have to feel the need to escape. Let's cut them off at the legs. Decriminalize all the drugs. Follow Portugal's example. See what that does. All right, that's going to be it for this episode. I got more stuff coming up. There's more stuff that happened with Epstein, so I'm going to do another episode about that because I promised that I wasn't going to let that story die. I want to probably talk about Iran at some point and maybe impeachment stuff. I don't know. It's so stupid. I don't know if I'm going to talk about it. So we'll see. We'll see what goes on there. And then, like I said, I've got some conversations with interesting people coming up. So thanks once again. Thanks for being patient. I look forward to getting back on a regular schedule and seeing how much this show can grow. So you are a sovereign individual. So am I. So is every single person that has suffered as a result of the idiotic war on drugs the United States government has perpetuated on the American people. Thanks, y'all.